Try a thing you haven't done 3 times. The first time, just to stare fear in the face. The second time, to actually learn how it works. And the third time, to discover if it's meant for you. But here's the tragedy. Most people never get past the first try because they confuse failure with finality. But failure's not the end. It's the invitation to begin again, only this time more intelligently. The wealthy, they know this. They don't run from failure. They use it. They pick up the broken pieces and build smarter, stronger, wiser. See, fear steals more dreams than failure ever will. Fear whispers, don't try, stay comfortable, avoid the risk. But wealth belongs to those who lean into failure, those who understand that behind every stumble is a lesson, and behind every lesson is a stepping stone to success. So, today, I will teach you how to remove the emotional sting from failure, how to extract the lesson buried inside every setback, and how to recycle failure into wisdom that builds fortunes. Failure builds emotional toughness. It's the grit under the polish, the endurance behind the smile. You see, most people get it backward. They think the wealthy live in some bubble where failure doesn't touch them. But the truth? The wealthy have failed more times than the average person has even attempted. They've stumbled, lost money, misjudged deals, trusted the wrong people. But each time they got a little tougher, a little wiser, and a little more emotionally disciplined. That's what wealth demands. It demands you carry the weight of responsibility, the uncertainty of risk, and the pressure of growth. And that requires resilience. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin. The poor, and I don't just mean financially poor, but poor in mindset, poor in habits, poor in perspective. They react emotionally to failure. Panic sets in. They blame circumstances, other people, bad luck. They feel guilt, regret, frustration, and they let those emotions drive their decisions. And where does that lead? It leads to quitting. It leads to shrinking back into comfort zones where nothing grows, especially not wealth. But the wealthy, they pause, they breathe, and they analyze. They don't let emotions sabotage the lesson that failure is trying to teach. They separate the temporary sting from the permanent wisdom. That's how they protect their momentum, their confidence, their future opportunities. So, here's what I want you to practice. This is simple but life-changing, and yes, I've done this more times than I can count. The next time you fail, and believe me, if you're stretching for success, it's coming. Don't react emotionally. Don't vent to the wrong people. Don't retreat into distractions. Don't drown in frustration. Instead, schedule a 30-minute debrief session with yourself. Sit down, pen and paper in hand, and think like an accountant auditing your own performance. What happened? Where did you misjudge, underestimate, or act too quickly? Where did emotion override strategy? Because when you remove the drama and focus on the data, you turn failure from a setback into tuition. You pay once, but you learn forever. That's how the wealthy treat every stumble. Not as proof they can't win, but as preparation for the day they will. And if you can develop that emotional toughness, I'll tell you, the weight of opportunity won't crush you, it'll crown you. Most people experience failure like it's some kind of final judgmenta heavy stamp that says, not good enough. And they carry that weight around for months, even years. But the wealthy, they've learned to turn failure into fuel. They don't waste pain, they extract wisdom from it, and they do it intentionally. That's what builds real wealth, not just in your bank account, but in your thinking, your strategy, your ability to make better decisions with each passing year. See, I discovered early on that failure by itself is nothing more than wasted discomfort unless you capture the lesson. And the wealthiest minds, the sharpest thinkers, they don't let a painful experience drift off into memory. They trap it on paper. They turn every failure into a written financial lesson. You might call it a failure journal. I call it one of the most valuable assets you can own. Here's how simple it is. After every poor decision, whether it's a missed investment, a regrettable purchase, a business deal that slipped through your fingers, you sit down Not with frustration, but with focus. You write down 3 things, clearly and without excuses. First, what exactly happened. You strip the story down to the facts. No sugarcoating, no blame shifting. You document the details as if you're reporting it to an investor who needs the full picture. Second, why did it fail? Now this part requires humility. You've got to own your part. Maybe you moved too fast. Maybe you didn't research deeply enough. Maybe emotion clouded your judgment. Be honest, brutally honest, because honesty protects your future profits. Third, what can I do differently next time? And this is where the gold lives. The wealthy don't just record failure for reflection, they record it for refinement. That journal becomes a vault of wisdom. You flip back through the pages and realize, I've seen this pattern before. I've been tempted by this shortcut before. I've misjudged timing or trusted the wrong source before. And guess what? You don't repeat the mistake. You outgrow it. That's how wealth compounds, not just financially, but mentally. I can tell you from personal experience, some of my most profitable decisions, the ones that multiplied income, secured opportunities, built relationships, were shaped directly by the pages of my own failure journal. I've lost money, sure. I've miscalculated deals. But because I wrote it down, because I studied the setback, I didn't have to pay that tuition twice. Most people make money mistakes, but only the wealthy learn from them with intention. You don't build generational wealth by repeating avoidable errors. You build it by documenting your scars, turning them into strategies, and making sure every failure pays rent for occupying space in your story. If you're willing to write it down, reflect and refine, you'll find that every financial bruise can mature into wisdom, and wisdom, my friend, is the currency that wealth respects most. Most people avoid failure like it's a plague. But the wealthy, they build systems where failure works for them, not against them. You see, wealth isn't created by gambling everything on one bold move. It's built by stacking small, calculated tests that reveal what works and what doesn't. That's what I call the try small, fail small system. The people who end up with real wealth never bet the farm they test the soil first. Let me tell you something from personal experience. Years ago, I watched a young man drain his entire savings trying to start a business because he was convinced, absolutely convinced, it was the next big thing. His enthusiasm wasn't the problem. His lack of testing was. He didn't try small, so when failure showed up, and it often does in the beginning, it wiped him out completely. The wealthy avoid that trap because they understand that smart failure is strategic failure. Here's how it works in practice. You've got an idea, maybe it's a business, maybe it's an investment, maybe it's a new skill. Instead of diving in with your life savings, you dip a toe in the water. You test the market with $100 before you risk $10,000. You build a mini version of your product before you build the full-scale operation. You invest a few hours a week sharpening a new skill before you quit your job to chase a new career. That's not hesitation. That's intelligent discipline. See, most people fall into 2 dangerous groups. Group 1 is paralyzed by fear. They never start, never try, never risk. So they stay exactly where they are, broke and frustrated. Group 2 jumps in with reckless emotion. They risk too much, too soon, without data, without feedback, without proof. The wealthy, they belong to a 3rd group, the strategic testers. They protect their downside while exploring their upside. When you test small, failure becomes affordable. You learn lessons with $100 mistakes, not $10,000 disasters. You gather market feedback while your business is still nimble, not after you've sunk years of energy and every penny into it. You let reality guide your next move, not just hope or hype. You want to know the real reason this system works? It compounds your confidence. With every small test, every controlled risk, you gather proof that you can adapt, adjust, and grow. And confidence, much like wealth, isn't built overnight. It's built brick by brick, test by test, win by win, small failure by small failure. So the next time you're tempted to throw everything into an idea, pause, step back, build your try small, fail small system. The wealthy don't chase risky miracles. They engineer reliable results, one smart test at a time. That's how financial success is built, not by avoiding failure, but by managing it with wisdom, patience, and strategy. Most people admire success, but very few study failure with the same intensity. And yet, the truth is, success leaves clues, but failure leaves entire road maps if you know where to look. The wealthy, they don't just collect trophies, they collect lessons, especially from their worst moments. That's one of the secrets to building sustainable wealth, learning not only from your own failures, but from the bruises, breakdowns, and bankruptcies of those who've gone before you. You see, I learned this lesson early on when I started studying biographies of the greats, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the empire builders. I wasn't just reading for entertainment, I was digging for patterns, for cautionary tales, for the raw truth most people miss when they only focus on the headlines of success. Behind every fortune, there are failures most people never talk about at parties. The deals that collapse, the misjudgments that cost millions, the partnerships that turn sour. But the wealthy, they talk about those moments in private circles, they reflect on them, they document them, and they extract wisdom from them. Here's the practical truth. If you want to avoid stepping on landmines, walk in the footsteps of those who already mapped the battlefield. Read biographies, not just the glossy feel-good parts, but the gritty sections where everything went sideways. Ask questions when you meet successful people. Don't just ask what made you rich. Ask what nearly ruined you. What did you learn from your biggest mistake? How did you rebuild after your worst month? That's where the gold is buried. You know, I once heard a billionaire say, "My bank account grew the most after I lost the most." That sounds strange, doesn't it? But it's true. Their biggest financial growth often came after they survived their worst decisions because they studied the failure. They didn't just suffer through it. They reviewed the deals they shouldn't have made, the risks they miscalculated, the warning signs they ignored, and then they built new systems, better strategies, stronger boundaries. When I look back at my own career, I'll tell you plainly, some of my most profitable seasons came right after I humbled myself, sat down, and studied how other people's failures played out. I didn't just learn how they won. I learned how they stumbled, and more importantly, how they recovered. Wealth compounds for those who don't just seek mentors, they seek cautionary tales. You can save yourself years of struggle by understanding how others lost money, credibility, or momentum. But it requires curiosity, discipline, and humility to look beyond the success stories and ask the tough questions. So if you're serious about building wealth, don't just collect success principles, collect failure lessons. Build your financial foundation not only on ambition, but on the hard-earned wisdom of those who've walked through fire and emerged smarter. That's how wealth grows, by standing on the shoulders of those who fell, learned, and rebuilt. Most people treat a financial loss like a scar that never fades, a permanent reminder of failure. But the wealthy, they treat every financial loss like tuition, the price you pay to attend the school of experience. You see, the greatest university you'll ever attend isn't built with brick and mortar. It's built with your own decisions, both the good ones and the bad ones. And often it's the bad ones that teach you the most if you're willing to pay attention. I remember early in my career, I made an investment that went south. Now, I could have spent months beating myself up, blaming the market, blaming circumstances, or worse, blaming luck. But instead, I took out a piece of paper, wrote down the amount I lost, and next to it, I wrote in big letters, "Tuition paid," because that's exactly what it was, a lesson I paid for with my own money. It hurt, sure, but that pain sharpened my awareness, deepened my discipline, and made me smarter for every future deal. You have to understand, nobody gets rich by avoiding mistakes. They get rich by processing them differently. The average person takes a loss and lets it turn into bitterness. The wealthy take the same loss, write it down as a tuition fee, analyze it, and extract the lesson. That's why they keep getting better while others stay stuck in cycles of frustration. Here's how you can apply this starting today. The next time you lose money, maybe it's a bad investment, a business deal that didn't pan out, or even something smaller like lending money to someone who never paid you back. Pause. Instead of spiraling into regret or anger, grab a notebook or open a document and title the page, Tuition Bill. Write down the amount you lost, plain and simple. Then ask yourself, what course did I just pay for? Maybe it was Don't Lend to Friends 202. Maybe it was Do Your Due Diligence 101. Maybe it was Emotional Spending Detox. Whatever it is, name the lesson, own it, and most importantly, commit to applying it so you never pay that tuition twice. I'll tell you from experience, some of the most expensive lessons I've learned have made me the most money later simply because I didn't waste the pain. I converted it into wisdom. And that wisdom, unlike money, compounds forever. It doesn't depreciate. It gets sharper with every mistake you choose to study rather than bury. So remember, financial losses aren't the end unless you refuse to learn. They're tuition bills from the real world, the wealthiest classroom there is. Pay them, study them, and let every mistake make you richer, not just regretful. You know, one of the greatest misconceptions about wealth is that it comes from taking more, charging more, squeezing more out of people. But the truth, the real, unshakable truth is that the people who build lasting wealth are the ones who consistently give more than they charge. It's a simple rule, but most overlook it because it requires character, patience, and a long-term vision. But once you understand this principle, it changes how you approach business, money, and success altogether. See, money is nothing but a certificate of appreciation. It's society's way of saying, thank you for the value you've brought to my life. And the more value you give, the more those certificates flow your way. But here's the twist. Most people want the certificates first. They want to get paid before they've delivered anything extraordinary. That's not how the wealthy think. The wealthy understand that if you make it your mission to always give more than what you're asking in return, you become indispensable. And wealth follows those who are indispensable. I remember early in my speaking career, I wasn't the highest paid, I wasn't the most recognized, but I made a promise to myself. Every time I got up on that stage, I would deliver so much practical value, so much clarity, so much usable wisdom, that people would walk away thinking they got the better end of the deal even if they'd paid for a ticket. And you know what happened? Word spread. My value spread. And the income, the opportunities, the partnerships, they all followed naturally because people knew I wasn't just there to take, I was there to give, to over-deliver, to serve beyond the transaction. Wealthy individuals in every field, whether they're running companies, building products, offering services, or simply leading teams, they live by this rule. You buy their product, and you find out it solves more problems than you expected. You pay for their advice, and you walk away with insights that change your entire approach to business or life. They've conditioned themselves to always exceed expectations, and in doing so, they create a gravitational pull for success. It's the baker who gives you that extra loaf when you only paid for one. It's the consultant who stays after the meeting to help you strategize beyond the scope of the project. It's the entrepreneur who keeps refining their product, making it better even after they've already been paid. Those are the people whose names you remember, whose businesses you recommend, and whose bank accounts quietly grow year after year. And here's the beauty of this principle. Over-delivering builds reputation, reputation builds trust, and trust builds wealth. Not overnight, but in the most sustainable, resilient, and respected way possible. So the next time you think about how much to charge, shift your focus. Don't ask, how much can I get? Ask, how much more can I give? Because when you consistently give more than you charge, wealth doesn't just knock on your door, it sets up camp, stays a while, and brings friends. That's how the wealthy do it. Most people walk around with their eyes fixed on the next 24 hours. They're chasing Friday's paycheck, thinking about next month's rent, hoping to survive until the next holiday bonus. And there's nothing wrong with handling short-term needs, but if that's all you ever focus on, you'll stay stuck in that small cycle, never building real wealth. The wealthy, They operate differently. They've trained their minds to stretch beyond days or weeks and to start thinking in decades. They plant seeds today knowing full well they might not taste the fruit for 10 or even 20 years, but when that fruit arrives, it's abundant, it's secure, and it keeps coming. I'll tell you, years ago, I learned this lesson the hard way. I was working hard, earning commissions, living for the next check. But I had no long-term plan. I'd spend as fast as I made it chasing shiny objects, impressing people I didn't even like, and wondering why I never got ahead. It wasn't until I sat down with a mentor who asked me, "What are you building 10 years from now?" that it hit me like a freight train. I wasn't building anything. I was renting my lifestyle from moment to moment, never planting anything lasting. Wealthy individuals, they view money, effort, and time as seeds. They don't eat the seed they planted. They invest in assets, in skills, in relationships that might not produce immediate returns, but will multiply in value as the years go by. They buy properties with a 20-year vision. They nurture businesses with a 15-year game plan. They teach their children principles that won't reveal their power until the next generation. It's quiet wealth. It's not always flashy, but it's durable, and it grows while others are stuck sprinting in circles. Here's where this really transforms your life. When you start thinking in decades, your daily decisions change. You're not tempted by impulsive spending because you see the bigger picture. You're not thrown off by small failures because you know they're just steps along the long road. You don't panic during economic downturns. You position yourself patiently because wealth favors the prepared, not the frantic. It's like planting a tree. You don't rush the harvest, you nurture the roots. You water the soil. You shield it from storms. And one day, often when you least expect it, that tree provides shade, fruit, stability, and legacy not just for you, but for your family, your community, your future. So ask yourself today, what seeds am I planting for the next decade? Because wealth, the kind that lasts, isn't built by thinking in paychecks, it's built by thinking in legacies. Let me tell you something most people never want to hear. Motivation is fleeting. It's like a spark that burns bright for a moment, then disappears, leaving you right back where you started. That's why the people who rely on motivation, the mood, the hype, the perfect timing, they stay stuck, frustrated, broke, and wondering why nothing changes. The wealthy, they figured out a different game altogether. They live by the rule of unshakable habits. See, discipline isn't loud. It doesn't show up with fanfare. It's not exciting or glamorous, but it's deadly effective quietly, steadily, relentlessly building the foundation of wealth. The wealthy don't wake up every morning hoping they feel inspired to read, to budget, to review their finances, to learn a new skill. They've trained themselves to do it, whether they feel like it or not, especially when they don't feel like it. I remember in my early days, I wanted success. I wanted the lifestyle, the choices, the freedom. But I was waiting for that perfect wave of inspiration to hit me. The problem was, it rarely showed up when I needed it. That's when I realized success belongs to those who master the small, boring, repeatable actions that nobody applauds, the ones that compound in the background while everyone else is distracted by entertainment and excuses. The wealthy read daily, not just when they feel motivated to expand their mind. They invest consistently, not just when the markets look exciting. They budget their money with precision, not only when things feel tight. They review their goals, reflect on their progress, and protect their time with discipline, not emotion. It's unshakable, it's automatic, it's who they are, not just what they do when the stars align. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation to do that, right? You just do it because it's part of your identity, your routine. The same is true for building wealth. When saving, investing, learning, and managing your resources becomes part of your DNA, not something you debate every morning, you shift from hoping for success to guaranteeing it. And here's the beauty of these quiet habits. They compound. The book you read today might not change your life tomorrow, but over time, that knowledge separates you from the pack. The $100 you invest today may look small, but compounded over years, it grows quietly while others spend frivolously. The time you devote daily to learning new skills or understanding markets may seem insignificant, but stack it up and suddenly you're the expert, the leader, the one with options. Wealth isn't built in one grand moment of motivation. It's built in the shadows of quiet, disciplined, repeatable actions that most overlook. So don't chase hype, build habits. Because unshakable habits create unshakable wealth. Let me leave you with something to think about as we wrap this up, and I want you to let it settle deep, because this may be the moment your entire financial life shifts. See, wealth isn't an accident. It's not reserved for the lucky, the connected, or those born into the right family. It's the natural byproduct of small disciplines repeated over time. It's the outcome of how you think, how you act, and how you respond every single day. And here's the truth. If you've been waiting for someone to come along and hand you permission to build wealth, to change your circumstances, to rewrite your story, you've just received it. But the permission has always been yours. Wealth is built when ordinary people decide to adopt extraordinary levels of discipline. When they stop blaming the economy, their upbringing, their lack of resources, and start focusing on the only thing they truly control, their habits. You can't change the world overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. You can choose to start saving. You can choose to learn. You can choose to develop the mindset of wealth, even if your bank account hasn't caught up yet. I'm not here to sell you fantasy. I'm here to remind you that the bridge between where you are and where you want to be is built with discipline, with clarity, with patience. And no, it won't always be easy. Some days you'll want to quit. Some days your old habits will scream louder than your vision. But if you keep showing up, reading, learning, saving, investing, thinking long-term, the results will come. Quietly at first, then suddenly, and then people will call you lucky. But remember, wealth is not just numbers in an account. It's options. It's peace of mind. It's being able to send your kids to the school of your choice, to travel where you want, to give generously without fear. That is the real reward. But it begins with small, simple disciplines. So I challenge you, don't just listen to this message and feel good for a moment. Act. Start the savings account. Open the book. Schedule the time to learn. Review your goals. Adjust your thinking. Because the wealthy aren't special, they're simply consistent. The clock is ticking whether you act or not. But your future? That part's still unwritten. So take the pen and start building it today.